How to stop overthinking. This is a big one. A couple weeks ago, we were sitting on the couch, my wife and I, trying to pick something on Netflix or Prime or Disney. I can't remember which, but there's just so much to choose from. And that's a big part of the problem. It's almost stressful because you can feel like you're watching your time slip away. With so many choices, it just actually adds stress to what should be a relaxing activity. So instead of choosing one and getting started, we scroll, debate, and then it feels like almost like you sort of give up and just eventually decide. Now, I love when real life stories like this connect to things that I want to talk about. I was drifting off in thought while I was sitting there on the couch trying to figure out what we wanted to watch. And while we were scrolling through the different streaming services, looking for something, it reminded me of the classic parable, Buridan's donkey, which is named after the 1300s philosopher John Buridan. And the story goes like this. A donkey is standing between two equally enticing nourishments. On one side, you have a pile of hay, and the other, a bowl of water, but they lack reason. The donkey lacks reason and is overwhelmed by the decision. Because they're unsure which to go for, they actually end up becoming dehydrated and starving to death because they couldn't make up their mind. The moral is that overthinking can lead to inaction, which is far worse than making either choice, even if the choice is the quote-unquote wrong one. This tale is a simple but powerful metaphor for how overthinking can really paralyze us. I try to remember it when it comes to choosing something, when it's time that I have to select or decide on something, but it's not as important to remember the story as it is to remember what we can do about it to make our decisions much more likely, much more efficient. And in our case with the movies, let's say sometimes there are really strong reasons to choose. For example, I know that I really want to see Jelly Roll's documentary. When Louis Capaldi's documentary dropped, my wife and I both wanted to check it out. Or I love the Joker, so the first movie I know was great. When the second one comes out, I'll naturally be motivated to check it out as soon as possible. But where I get caught up in this phenomenon, just as much as anyone else, that actually truly matters, way more than picking a movie or something like that, is deciding what I want to work on. Both in the macro, like should I write a new book, or in the micro, I have 45 minutes that I could work on something right now. What do I want to do with my time? And just yesterday, I was talking with a creator friend of mine, Amanda Northcutt, the founder of Level Up Creators. She was asking about some of my ideas, wondering why I haven't acted on them yet. And honestly, in our conversation, I didn't have a great answer. But sometimes trying to explain our thoughts out loud to others and struggling a bit like this can actually really help us realize how silly our excuses are or how much we're overthinking. And so I was wondering to myself what was holding me back. Driving home that day, I started questioning whether I was just making excuses for the things I knew I wanted to accomplish, or if there was something bigger getting in the way. And I realized that overall, I had allowed a lot of shiny objects to creep back into my workflow because I just had too many choices. I think part of this was being a full-time creator recently. I was working on live video, writing a book, long-form blog posts, tweet threads, visual illustrations for social media, short videos, solo podcast episodes, and interviews. And it's crazy to just write it out like this. The wild thing is that there were like 3 other business ideas in the works as well. Everything kind of felt equal. And so when I would sit down and I want to tackle some work, I would waste a ton of time. Not even kidding. Sometimes I would hardly get started at all. Now, this all connects to something called Hick's Law, which states that having plenty of choices affect the decision-making time of an individual. Too little choice, and they feel restricted, but a lot of choice, and they actually feel worse. Until a certain point, offering options to people is good. It provides those with the freedom to choose. But there comes a point at which the availability of too many options actually makes it harder for a person to make up their mind. They grow confused, stressed, tired, and they end up not making a decision at all. I see this all the time with people that I coach. It's something that I've actually had to learn the hard way, and I feel bad for some of the people that I worked with earlier on, where I was giving them too much choice or not enough choice and trying to approach it the same way for multiple people. I would think that I was giving them the goal of freedom and joy because they had the opportunity to choose. Or this is common with students in high school or college. We think about the idea of a student voice, and we feel like we are doing a service to them by giving them a whole bunch of options. But giving them all of these options, even if our intention is to create freedom and joy, we can end up robbing them of feeling happy at all because they're just so overwhelmed. They get trapped in overthinking, and almost like they're staring at a computer with 100 tabs open or a restaurant menu with every option in the world. It's chaotic. There's a lot of advice out there about decluttering your home and living more minimally. When I think of physical things, we think of getting rid of clothes or donating some books or toys that you have. That part seems to be pretty straightforward, but the very similar principles apply to decluttering your mind as well. Simplifying your thoughts and getting started is the key to breaking free from clutter and overthinking in our brain. But there is a Goldilocks sweet spot for everyone when it comes to choice, and that sweet spot evolves. Some people need to be told, write a story. Some need a genre, a specific prompt, or even fill in the blanks. Either way, it's important to set your priority, and then the next step just simply becomes getting started with any priority at all. Once you know the most important things to work on, you can decide to focus on those. So in my case right now, for example, it's the podcast and the book. I would love to work on all the other things someday in some way. Hopefully I will. But for right now, it's the podcast and the book. That's step one. Pick your priority. But these are still huge projects. A podcast and a book are still massive. So how do I make up my mind about what to work on within the two priorities? When we don't have a strong reason to choose, that's where we get stuck. We feel like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. But here's a little secret. It can be the opposite. We can thrive with any of the choices, so long as we decide, as long as we make a choice. And this is why randomness can go a long way to declutter our minds. When we're kids, we just randomly choose what we want to do. But as adults, a lot of our rules and feedback have gotten in the way and led us to weigh our options. Sometimes this makes a lot of sense, a list of pros or cons, but then you got to pull the trigger. Randomness to make a decision removes some reason and logic, but that's exactly what we need sometimes. So when two options are compelling or a bunch of options are compelling, we cannot use reasoning skills to make the decision. Sometimes the best solution to the problem is to turn to chance. Roll of the dice, random generator, picking names out of a hat, flipping a coin. For example, my book will have 60-some chapters. I can't think too long about which one to work on, and in fact, this is very much in the moment, but after I record this, I'm going to work on my book, and I need to just pick somewhere to start. Within a chapter, I have many ideas as well. So once I've picked a chapter, I just need to pick one of those ideas and start writing. The podcast is similar. I have a document with episode ideas, and it has like 400 plus ideas. If I question which topic to tackle, I'll run out of time and motivation to take on any of them. So I need to just pick one and go. Sometimes it's as easy as flipping a coin, actually related to the movies that I was talking about earlier, or restaurants. This is one of the tactics that a lot of people use in their homes. Pull a name from a jar of movies that you want to watch or restaurants that you want to try, and whatever you get is what you get. If you're a musician and you have 150 ideas for songs, you sit down to write one, you just got to pick one and start writing. The moral here is all the same. Overthinking results in wasted time and missing out. Before you know it, 10 years will go by and none of the songs will get written. Simply choose a direction and take any action. That's way more effective than weighing your decisions for too long. Just list out your options, put them all in a jar, shake it up, pull one out, and get started. That's it for today's episode. I hope it really helps you stop overthinking. I know for me, just jotting down these ideas, saying them out loud again, is actually going to help me stop overthinking some of the things that I've been questioning myself. And that's actually a great side note reminder, is that the best things we can work on, the best personality traits and skills are forever infinite games. We are all always getting better at this stuff. I hope this episode really helped you out. Until the next one, all the best. And remember, just keep learning.